Hello, Canada. Hello, United States of America. Greetings to all of you here with me in Panama and all over the planet. My name is Kevin J. Johnston. This is the Kevin J. Johnston Show that runs absolutely every single Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Tonight, our special guest is the astounding Chris Sky, the guy who actually did win the Toronto mayor race, but was stolen from him. All right. He's going to be joining us in just a very few minutes, everybody. You got to remember that I am now here in the country of Panama. And if you want to get your money away from the Canadian government, it's time to do it right now. Head over to my personal website, kevinjjohnston.me. That's kevinjjohnston.me. The Canadian government is going out of its way to take everything you have. Don't let them do it. Get your money moved down here to Panama where it belongs. I can assist you with all of that. That is what I do for a living, everyone. My God, I'm so excited. Chris Sky, he's there waiting. He's got a brand new haircut. I've never seen him with this haircut. He's looking good as always. But first, we have ourselves a sponsor. Digitout.ca is the Greater Toronto Area's #1 landscaping company. Give Greg a call right now at 647-212-3786. Have a look at this project here. How would you like to have a fence made of steel bars and river lock? Look how good that is. My Lord, if you want to increase your property value, get a hold of Greg at digitout.ca, 647-212-3786. Now, normally, guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, normally I would monologue for about 5-10 minutes, but I'm not doing that because we have Chris Sky right here, right now. Chris, a pleasure as always. Brother, where are you these days?
Right now, I'm currently in Istanbul, Turkey. It is actually 4 o'clock in the morning for me. I woke up just for you guys. So,
because you're awesome that way. You're definitely awesome that way. Chris, why are you in Turkey? Go ahead.
I'm just on vacation here, going through like a full, as you can see, even different haircut. Everything's changing. Planning on leaving Canada. Unfortunately, people don't want to hear that, but we got a lot to talk about today about why Canada is probably, of the so-called developed nations, the very worst of all the countries. And first, the real problem is the financial problems in Canada. And I wanted to talk a little bit about money because I talked about this on my Telegram to try to explain why we're in the mess that we're in. And it occurred to me that 99.9% of people know exactly who's playing in the Stanley Cup Finals, but have no idea how or where our money comes from and how it's been specifically designed to absolutely enslave us through debt and inflation. And a very famous man once said, if the people ever allow the banks to issue their currency, by inflation, they will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. That's Thomas Jefferson. And this is a man that knew what he was talking about. He did not trust the international bankers. And the system that we have now is worse than he could have ever imagined. I gave you some screenshots. I don't know if we can get them all put up there at the same time.
I even jazzed them up. I made them widescreen for you. You let me know when you're ready. I'll put them up right now.
Okay, so before we can understand what's really wrong with Canada, we got to understand the monetary system and the monetary system that they brought into North America in general. So we're going to bring up what a U.S. dollar looked like before 1965, what a U.S. dollar looked like after 1965, and how Canada followed the U.S. basically 2 years later in 1967 and did the exact same policies that made the debt spiral out of control. You made inflation come so high that our standard of living is not even a fraction of what our parents have. And the standard of living our children have is the one where they've already told us, you will own nothing and be happy. How can they be so brazen and predict this? Because they can look at the math and they can look at exactly what's happening and they can look at exactly what this system has been designed to do. And I never understood. I always overestimated Canadians. I always thought they were the smarter ones than Americans. But the reality is, when it comes to where our money comes from and how the system has been set up 100% rigged against you, that's why they call these people the 99%. Because literally more than 99% of people do not understand how money works, how it's been designed to enslave you through inflation and debt. And if you look at the statistics, right now, Canada is seeing the most massive exodus of citizens since its inception. And we're talking the best, the brightest, and the wealthiest are all leaving Canada in record numbers. Why?
Hey,
Because
Chris,
they see the.
I got to
Go
add
ahead.
to that. The two best looking guys in the country have also left. All right. So think about that, ladies.
I did say the best and the brightest and the wealthiest. So those three categories of people, the only three people that understand what's actually happening, see that not only does Canada not have a bright future, Canada as we know it, Canada as we came to love it, my home of 40 years, is finished. Canadians don't want to hear that. They say they'll call me names. They'll call me. I'm going to be the most unpopular Canadian after this show because I'm going to tell everybody that Canadians are the dumbest and the most weakest people, not just on planet Earth today, but in the history of humanity. And I can back that up because all the European countries, including the United States, Australia, New Zealand, UK, all the so-called Western countries, or the ones that have a majority of white people living there, have been under the exact same attacks as Canada by the globalists. However, Canada is only 152 years old. We are the youngest country in the world, and we are faring far worse than any of these other countries. And the only reason for that is because we have the most compliant, most so-called tolerant, and most ignorant population, not just alive today, but in my opinion, in the history of the world. Sorry, Canadians, you're the dumbest, you're the weakest, and you will put up with absolutely anything, and you believe anything you're told by the government. So, starting from there, let's talk about how our money supply was first hijacked by the bankers and then remodeled by the bankers in a way to absolutely guarantee our destruction and our absolute slavery. So if you could, please put up the dollar from pre-1965, the dollar from after 1965. That's just the dollar. Okay, first we'll talk about the United States dollar pre-1965.
Go ahead.
Before 1965, the United States was on something called the gold standard, where the currency was tied to gold and silver. Now, the average Canadian today is so stupid. When I mention the gold standard, they believe that I'm talking about using gold and silver coins to pay for stuff like it's the 1700s. They don't understand that it's the exact same money that they're used to using. It looks almost identical, except there's one big difference. So let's put that money back up, the pre-1965 money, and I'm going to show you what it is and how it works.
Okay, so we got, this is
This is the pre-1965 money.
Silver certificate dollars. Go ahead.
Yes, this is when the country was tied to gold or silver. So what did that mean? Number one, it meant that every $1, and if you look at the very top there, it says silver certificate, right above the United States of America. It says silver certificate $1. What did that mean? That meant that you can trade that $1 bill for 1 ounce of silver. That tying to that precious metal is what held the value of that money. On top of that, the gold standard would only allow banks to print as much money relative to the amount of gold and silver they actually held. So it's not like today where the banks could just print trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and then each time they print a new dollar, your dollar is worth less. These banks were tied to the amount of gold and silver they had, so they could not print any more money than that. So they can increase the money supply as they increase their gold and silver supply. And how could they do that? By having a robust economy. So please put up the debt chart for the United States of America.
Okay, Chris, before we do that, I just want people to see what the current dollar bills look like.
Yes, and we're going to get to that. So that's the current $1 bill. The front of the $1 bill, this is after 1965, everybody.
Yeah.
As you can see, the front of the bill looks virtually identical. And that is by design to trick you. That's the pre-1965. This is post. The only difference in the bill, if you look above the United States of America, it no longer says silver certificate. It now says Federal Reserve note. These are now pieces of paper made by the Federal Reserve, by the way, which is a private bank. People think the Federal Reserve is part of the government because it has federal in the name. Federal Express Shipping has federal in the name. It's a 100% private for-profit company, and so is the Federal Reserve. And in 1965, the Federal Reserve decided that they are going to take over the banking system, and no longer is your $1 a silver certificate that you could trade for 1 ounce of silver. It is now a Federal Reserve note, which is backed by absolutely nothing. And fast forward real quick to today, how many Federal Reserve note dollars do you need for 1 ounce of silver? Answer, 30 versus 1 in 1965. That is how much purchasing power of yours has been stolen through inflation and debt. And to put that into perspective, the so-called American dream in 1965 was a man could take a job and work, and the average man's salary in the 60s was around $10,000 a year. The average house for a man to buy was around $30,000. So a man in the 1960s and before, working a normal blue-collar job, like most people work today, would be able to buy, not get a mortgage, not a down payment, be able to buy and fully pay off a house with only 3 years of salary. That is how you can have a man working while the woman stays home, looks after the kids. The man would have enough money to pay for the house, buy, not lease, buy a few cars, and put money aside for the children so they could have college, so they could help them with getting their own house, aka the so-called American dream. Fast forward to 2024.
That very quickly. I just want to make one quick comment on that. You're absolutely correct. My folks got married in the early 60s. They bought their first house in 1967 for $17,500. My father was able to pay that off the year I was born in 1971. And the family always had 2 cars. My brother and myself had swimming lessons, soccer leagues, hockey leagues, and sometimes even a little bit of karate lessons. Everything was paid for. We always had bikes. When ColecoVision came out, we had that. So we were fine up until about 1993, 94. Go ahead.
Nothing was leased. Everything was purchased.
Correct.
Everything was purchased in full. You didn't have any debt. You didn't have any interest payments to anybody. You owned your life. You were in charge of your life, and you had more than enough to provide for multiple children. And that was great. And that's why they call it the American dream. Fast forward for a second to 2024.
Yep.
Now, the average person, we'll talk about Toronto, for instance, makes around $55,000 a year. So they make 5 times as much as they made in 1960. But that same house that cost 30 grand in 1960 in the Toronto now costs between 800 to $1 million. So instead of 3 years salary, it's now between 17 and 20 years salary to purchase a house. So the average person, 99% of people, can't purchase a house. What do? They put a down payment, and then they have to take out a mortgage, and then they have to pay interest payments for the next 25 years to pay for that house. So that house that you bought for $1 million after you pay interest for 25 years really cost you $1.4 million, and you're only making 50 grand a year. So it costs you a quarter century to pay for that house. Now you have to lease a car. Your wife also has to work. So the kids have to be taught at school. So how did they do this? How did they literally steal your purchasing power and make your lives miserable? When your parents try to tell you, oh, you have it so much better than we did, that is the complete opposite of reality. And they have been programmed and brainwashed to believe that. Every single person alive today, parents had it better than they did, exponentially. So what the hell happened? Can you put up the debt chart from the United States?
This one here. Okay, everyone, you're about to see. I know. Look on TikTok, everybody. I know you can't see what we're showing here on the screen. If you want to see what's happening on the screen and you want to see this dynamite-looking guy, Chris Sky, simply type in freedomreport.ca and you'll come out over to my Rumble channel where you can see everything. By the way, there's only 1.4 thousand likes. So let's everyone tap your fingers, like just duel your fingers down, get them going, get the likes going, please. And if you're watching on Rumble, everybody, you see where Chris's knuckles are right now? Directly below Chris, there's a thumbs up. Could you all please hit that? Greatly appreciated. Here's the debt chart that Chris is talking about.
Now, as you see, from the early 1900s all the way to the mid-1970s, the debt is virtually stable. Why? Because when they were on the gold and silver standard, they could not print more money than they actually had gold and silver reserves. So even though the bankers were charging interest for every dollar printed, the economy was growing faster than the amount of interest. So every single year, as the economy grew and they had more money than they did last year, they had more than enough money to pay off the debt. So you did not accumulate any debt. You did not accumulate any inflation. Debt equals inflation. The more debt you have, the more money they print. The more money they print, the less your money is worth. And as you saw in that chart, right about the 1970s, when they changed over from the gold standard silver certificate dollars to Federal Reserve notes, debt absolutely skyrockets. Now, put the new US dollar bill front and back on the screen because we're going to explain something.
Go ahead.
As you saw on the front of the bill, it's virtually identical to the pre-1965 dollar, with the exception of it saying Federal Reserve note above the United States of America instead of silver certificate. Now, the average person had no clue what that tiny change meant for them. If you look at the back of the bill, this is where the origin of the so-called Illuminati and New World Order comes from. Because in their doctrine, they have to literally draw you a picture and tell you what they are doing to you because it is pure evil, and it is up to you to be smart enough to understand and actively just say no. And if you don't say no, your participation is a tacit and complicity. Put it back up because we need to explain the rear of the US dollar.
But to everybody who's asking the question, you see here, it says Federal Reserve note on the 20 as well. I've got a bunch of US bills here because I'm in Panama and it's the American dollar. Every single one says Federal Reserve note on it. So Chris, you want
the back of that US $1 bill. What do you guys see here? Can you zoom in on it or no?
I wish I could. No, I've got.
Okay, so if people are savvy enough, they can see on the left side of the bill a pyramid with the all-seeing eye illuminated on top of the pyramid. Literally the logo for the so-called Illuminati, letting you know that they have taken over the money supply. And right underneath that all-seeing eye and the pyramid, aka the Illuminati logo, there is a little inscription in Latin, and it says Novo Oro Seclorum. And that translates, ladies and gentlemen, to New World Order. When people are talking about the Illuminati and people are talking about the so-called New World Order, they are talking about how these people overtook the banking system with the intent to enslave you. That's a better picture of it. You can see it very clearly, a pyramid with an illuminated eye on top of it, and right under it in Latin, Novo Oro Seclorum, or a New World Order. Now, if you will, put the debt chart back up, because now we got to show you how exponential. So as soon as they made this change, and as soon as they weren't on the gold standard, now the government can print as much money as they wanted. They could triple, quadruple the money supply in a year if they wanted. And as you see, from 1970 all the way up into 2020, just before the pandemic, they accumulated almost $25 trillion in debt. $25 trillion. And that took them
we got a question here.
Sure.
Is there an upper limit to the amount of money that the Federal Reserve could print? Because to get to $20 trillion of debt seems insane, considering that there isn't really $20 trillion available out there, is there? So let's get an idea on that.
That's right. So they're printing money literally on a computer. That money does not even exist in reality anymore because they had to print so much money to keep up with the debt that they are artificially and intentionally creating, that from 1970 to 2020, 50 years, they accumulated almost 25 trillion in debt. And it gets way worse from there. What do you guys remember happened in 2020? A little something called the pandemic. And people thought the pandemic was about a virus and it was about getting control. The pandemic was a way to distract you so they could print exponentially more money to put you in so much debt that there is no possible way that the government could ever pay it off. So how much debt did they accumulate between 2020 and 2024? The debt went from around $23 trillion, which took them 50 years to get to over $36 trillion in just 4 years.
Wow.
And we are on the exact same path to continue that exponential debt increase to when finally, eventually, the rest of the world is going to realize, hey, the Americans are never going to be able to pay back this debt, and the dollar is going to literally be worthless. And the only reason it hasn't happened yet is because countries like China hold $2 or $3 trillion of US debt. So they are all lying about the amount of gold and silver that they really hold. Because if everybody knew how much gold and silver China really had, they say they have around 2,000 tons. In reality, it's between 15 and 30,000. The US dollar's value would literally drop like a stone, and the $2-3 trillion that China has would be worthless. And that's why China is on a mad spending spree of US dollars, buying up farmland, infrastructure, factories all over North America, and they're allowing the US dollar to unofficially stay where it is. The US dollar is already a dead currency. It's like the walking dead. It's dead but still walking like this. And we know that for a fact because BRICS has been created. And what is BRICS? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, along with 10 other Southeastern nations, and even giant allies like the United States, Saudi Arabia. And they have all decided that they are no longer going to use US dollars, the so-called world reserve currency, to trade in oil and trade in other commodities. So the US dollar has officially lost world reserve currency status, but it's still worth something because so many countries still have US dollars held that they don't want the dollar to drop any faster than it already is, because then the dollars they have will be worthless.
Okay, I just want to talk very quickly here about China with the mistakes that they've been making lately. First off, China's holding a ton of US debt. We know that. Well, not all of us do, but we do know that. They have been rifling through US dollars in their country, putting together ridiculously large building projects that are falling apart very quickly. It's called tofu construction in China right now, where these contracting companies are mixing cardboard, literally mixing cardboard with the bitumen and the and the concrete mixes. So their bridges are going up and they're falling down. So they changed their strategy, as you've indicated there, to start buying up infrastructure in the United States. So with them having a failing infrastructure in their country, but having purchased good infrastructure in the United States, what really is the goal there? Any idea?
They're virtually taking over the United States as we speak, and they're laundering as much US dollars in their own country as they could get away with. Because they couldn't build shit like that in the United States or Canada and get away with it because there's codes. So they're building it all over China to spend as much of these US dollars as fast as they physically can, and creating more work for them in the future because all those things are going to need to be repaired. So they're literally creating garbage. So they're going to have to rebuild it and refix it after, which is going to keep jobs going and keep their thing going. So now let's look at let's look at Canada for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
And why Canada is finished, why Canada is the worst country in the entire world. So we already established that Canada is the youngest country at 150 years old. And all the European countries are under the exact same attack as Canada. They're using the same type of monetary system. They're trying to bring in all these so-called migrants from third world countries. They're trying to bring in the digital ID, the digital currency. But Canadians are so compliant and so far gone that it is now at the point where they estimate there's only 19 million people in Canada of European descent. So that means there's 19 million white people out of 40 million people. So that means white Canadians are already a minority in their so-called home country. And every year we are bringing up to 1 million plus more people from the third world that we are paying for. On top of that, Canada's debt is at $2 trillion. We are the only country in the G20 where our debt is higher than our entire GDP. We have a debt to GDP ratio of 110%. What does that mean? That means that inflation is going to run rampant. That means that debt needs to be paid down. And rather than paying down the debt, what is Justin Trudeau doing? He puts together a budget with an extra $40 billion deficit. And why did they spend an extra $40 billion? Because if you look at the Canadian economy, we have one of the worst economies in the world right now. We are actually in a recession, and they expect the recession to last for at least another year. And when they come out with these so-called job reports, and they talk about hundreds of thousands of new jobs, guess where every one of those jobs is? They are a government job. Now, ladies and gentlemen, government jobs do not add $1 to GDP. In fact, government jobs need to be paid for by our tax dollars. So our government is the only part of the Canadian economy that's growing in size and expenditure. And how much is it growing? It's growing 400% or 4 times faster than our private sector. In a healthy country, the yearly expenditure on government should be between 20 and 25% of all our tax dollars. Our government is growing so fast with the intention of stealing as much wealth from private hands to public as possible, which is also called communism, my friends, that Canada is spending already 41% of every tax dollar on our government. While we're bringing in 1 million third worlders each year, while we're mired in a recession, so Canadians have absolutely no idea how bad it is. There's one other part of Canada that we need to talk about, our gold reserves. So countries keep gold as a reserve, as a safety net. We already talked about how China has between 15 and 30,000 tons of gold. The United States has over 8,000 tons of gold. Countries like Russia declare, and they have more than this, that they have 2,000 tons of gold. Even completely broke countries like Cambodia, Bolivia have 50 or 60 tons of gold. Do you know how much gold reserves Canada has, ladies and gentlemen?
I do know the answer to this one, Chris, and I'm going to use a little bit of sign language here, and I'm going to say it in French. Zero.
Thank you.
None.
Justin Trudeau sold off the last of our gold reserves in 2016. We don't have 1 ounce, let alone tons. We do not have 1 ounce of gold reserve. All we have is our Canadian dollar that is becoming less and less valuable every single year while our debt continues to skyrocket.
I have to now address the Canadian dollar's buying power. All right, everyone. Remember how we've talked at length about the fact that I left Canada back in November. And yeah, Kevin J. Johnston's a coward for leaving, blah, blah, whatever it is, guys. Couldn't find work. What's the point of being in Canada if I can't work? All right. So I go to Costa Rica, and instantly I realized that the Canadian dollar was losing between 25 and 30 cents on every single dollar. And the same thing is happening right now. So $2,000 US down here in Panama is costing almost 3,100 Canadian. Now,
and that's going to get worse every year because Canada is in the worst position of all these countries. So I did the math and I checked. We know that their goal is for Canadians to own nothing and be happy. We know that there is absolutely no wealth left in Canada because we're over 2 trillion in debt. We have 0 gold reserves. So what is the last remaining vestige of wealth left in Canada? It is the homes that are in private hands. So the next phase of the Canadian destruction and the Canadian takeover is the government going to turn everybody that's a homeowner into a home renter. So you're going to see, and they can artificially do this with the amount of debt and inflation they have, they are going to increase the cost of living in Canada by as much as they believe they can get away with every single year. And by my calculations, you are going to see a cost of living increase every year in Canada of around 30%. And that's on food, clothing, electricity, gas, home prices, home mortgage payments. Why? Because every year they want about 5 to 7% of their people to lose their homes or have to downgrade from a bigger home to a smaller home. Why do they not want it to happen all at once? Because then Canadians will realize and they'll be in the streets fighting back. But if it's only 5 to 7% of Canada losing their home every year, the other 90% plus people are just going to be happy to hold on to what they have. So what are they doing to the seniors? We know the dollar's worthless. We know that every single senior's pension is not going to be able to cover their retirement. So what is every senior going to do? It's going to become the most popular thing in Canada.
I'll tell you, because if you look at the bottom of it, the top right, this is what I do, Chris, is I'm helping Canadians with taxes. I'm going to tell you right now what the elderly are doing. They're taking chip reverse mortgages on their properties.
Thank you.
And they are losing everything. And I am helping them get rid of this stuff, Chris, but it's not easy. Let me tell you. Go ahead.
For those of you that don't know, a reverse mortgage is exactly what it sounds like. You get a mortgage when you want to buy a home and you get charged a shit ton of interest and you pay off that home over 25 years. Now you're a senior citizen. Your kids, the only way they're ever going to be able to afford a home in Canada is if you hand that home down to them. The government knows this. So the government's making sure that with the increase in cost of living of around 30% a year, the average 99% of senior citizens are not going to make ends meet. So they come in and pretend to be the hero, and they offer them what's called a reverse mortgage. It has way more fees and way higher interest payments than a normal mortgage, and it does the opposite. Now they give you money every month, and by the end of the reverse mortgage, you don't own the house anymore. The bank and the government take it back. So now you're giving nothing to your kids. So that you get to survive, live out your golden years with the same standard of living you enjoyed your whole life artificially. And then when you die, the bank recoups that house. And now what do we know? We know that over 30% of the population is around 55 plus. Reverse mortgages, mark my words, are going to become a multi-trillion-dollar industry in North America because virtually every single senior citizen, besides the uber wealthy, are going to have to use it just to survive. So that automatically puts their children in a position where they will never be able to own a home. They are going to be perpetual renters for their entire life. And what's their goal? Like I said, every year, a 30% increase. Every year, 5 to 7% of you losing your homes. After 3 cycles of 3 years, or a total of 9 years from now, your cost of living, if it's costing you 50 grand a year to live the way you live now, in 9 years from now, it's going to cost you $150,000 a year to have the same cost of same standard of living that you currently enjoy. So within 9 years, Go ahead.
I want to mention here, okay, the chip reverse mortgage. This is one where there's a lot of commercials out there, and what they'll do is they'll convince you that just taking a little bit of a withdrawal off the value of your property is the way that you live. Now, this is how crazy it is. I actually called these people, and I was stuttering deliberately, like, yeah, you know, I'm 65 and I don't have a job, and like instantly, is your house paid off? Well, yes, it is. So now here's the way it works. Okay. They're willing to give you up to $330,000. There's a huge fee at the beginning to get this to happen. It's over 10 grand, this fee. Then the interest that they're charging on your place is close to 9%, and you're not allowed to pay any of the interest off, any of the principal off, my mistake, or the interest for 1 year. Then in year number 2, you're only allowed to pay off the interest, not the principal of that thing. Check that out. And if you miss, ready for this? If you miss 4 payments in a row, you're out, and they force sale the home. That is how ridiculous a chip reverse mortgage is. Don't ever do it. Get a hold of me instead. I'm going to tell you exactly how you guys can get a little bit of cash out of your property without taking a stupid mortgage. It is ridiculous that anybody would even consider this. And Chris, you're right. It's the adult kids and the grandkids that now will not get that house, because no matter what, if you take a chip reverse mortgage, that house is going to be sold and cannibalized. Trust me. Yep. They'll even go so far, Chris, as to get a court order letting them get into the house and drain everything that's inside of it. So they'll go through your personal stuff and your parents' personal stuff. They'll take the furniture, the guns, the gold, the cash, the personal files, the jewelry, the televisions, the PlayStations, everything. Don't ever get a chip.
And then what happens? They buy up the entire neighborhood like that. So now they can tear down all those houses, those single family homes, and put up their 15-minute city style apartments where you're going to be renting a 300 square foot jail box, and that's where you're supposed to live. So that's where we're headed. And within 9 years, that's how long Canadians have. Within 9 years, the vast majority of Canadians will no longer be homeowners and never be able to be homeowners again. That is why the World Economic Forum is stating that by the 2030s, you will own nothing and be happy, because you will have no chance of ever owning a home, no chance of even owning a car, and 9 out of 10 people are going to be perpetual renters, riding bicycles, and eating fake meat and bugs, because they don't want you to do either. And forget about international travel. You will not have the means to travel maybe one vacation every 5 years if you are lucky. And this is not some conspiracy theory as Canadians want to believe. This is 100% your reality right now. And there is virtually no way to change this. When I try to tell this to Canadians, first of all, 99% of them are programmed to not understand it, not believe it. And 99% of them are programmed to literally embrace slavery and not even see it coming. After this show, 99% of you are not going to retain this information. You're going to go watch the hockey game, drink a beer, eat some wings, and you're going to tell yourself everything's going to be okay. Chris Sky, just some crazy guy that doesn't know what he's talking about.
And that's exactly what people said on Facebook when I put the ad out. Hey, that Chris Sky, man, he's nuts. They put on a tinfoil hat. Guys, look what Chris did. All right. What did Chris do? Was it almost 4.5 years ago? What did I do 4 years ago? I put a book out called Masks Are Bullshit. Chris went ahead and told all of you that there was, I can't say the word, there was no thing, because YouTube will shut this down the second I say there was no you know what. But I can say that I'm giving my book away. Head over to my website right now and grab a copy of it. Look at that. There's the coupon codes, KJJ Instagram 1 and KJJ Instagram 2. It's free. Take it. I've already made my money on this book, but I want you to know that I was correct almost 4 years ago. I want all of you to know Chris Sky, I'm saying it here, was correct 4 years ago. What Chris is saying now is going to be the reality in 3.5, 4 years.
It's the reality right now, and they couldn't change it. They could have changed it 3 years ago, because if everybody remembers, I said the only way we're going to get out of this, and I didn't just mean the pandemic and getting our freedoms back, I meant the trap that they had been setting for us, was a little something called United Non-Compliance. And I broke it down into 3 phases. Phase 1 was the global awakening, making everyone aware that they are now experiments of the government. The government doesn't like you. The government is trying to control you. Phase 2 was taking action, and that culminated in the trucker convoy, and we actually got our freedoms back. But when we had all those people aware, all those people angry, and all that momentum, I said that we needed to go and do phase 3, which was the most important part of United Noncompliance, and that was holding these people accountable, arresting the politicians, arresting the public health officials, and punishing them to the fullest extent of the law. Because the only way to change the course of what's going on right now is if we had a massive hypothetical revolution and we shrunk the size of government to less than half of what it is right now, and we cut government salaries to half of what they are right now. And instead of running a $40 billion budget deficit when we're already $2 trillion in debt, we have $100 or $200 billion budget surplus. That would be able to help us put us back on the right track. But the average Canadian, and I'm talking not average, 99% of you have no idea what is going on, no idea what has been done to you, no idea how money works, and no idea what your future is going to look like. There is a reason why record numbers of Canadians, the smart, the wealthy, and the people that can understand what's coming, they call them the best and brightest, are leaving in record numbers. And there's a reason why the rest of you, after we went through all the trouble of COVID and getting your freedoms back, instead of holding the government accountable, you had a beer, you sat back down on the couch, and you turned the mainstream media back on, and you let the government run your life. You have been programmed.
Not only that. Now, this is what really gets on my nerves. At the time, I was living in Calgary. So what had happened there during the thing is that they wrapped Saddle Dome up in all these white tents. I thought it was a zombie movie. It was crazy. And to get in to watch a hockey game, you had to go through 3 different testing centers just to be able to hand your ticket over to somebody. And you figure that people would say, hey, you know what, Flames? That's what you'd figure they'd say. But no, they started going back, and Saddle Dome is sold out again. So, yes, I agree with Chris here, is that it's not just Canadians, it's Americans too. You idiots all went back to the NFL stadiums, the NBA, the NHL, the Major League Baseball. Some of you went back to the CFL. Some of you even went back to the National Lacrosse League. All of these sports leagues told you couldn't come in without needles and masks and the whole bit.
Well, Chris, it gets even worse, and we'll talk about the U.S. in a second. But so Canada is literally on a 100% guaranteed path of a full transfer of wealth from private to public hands, which by definition is communism. This is what they call a soft communist takeover. And they're doing it as fast as possible and as slow as possible, to as fast enough that it happens without you being able to change it, but slow enough that the average person will not wake up and not fight back. All I hear from people like Jeremy McKenzie and all these other people that have podcasts, we're ready to fight. You're a coward for leaving. We're all ready. We're here. First of all, Jeremy McKenzie got his combat experience in Afghanistan, killing women, being paid to kill women and children in a country that had a 0% chance of ever attacking or invading Canada. Why are we in Afghanistan? So the same people, the Zionists that control our banking system and are destroying our country, could control the international heroin trade. So now we have these so-called war heroes that were working for the exact same people that are destroying Canada, telling everybody that we need to pick up our guns and we need to fight. The time to fight was when we had the trucker convoy and we had millions of people aware of what was going on. So all the people that are talking about they can't wait for a fight right now, I see right through that phony bravado as somebody who's been arrested 27 times and have been beat 80 charges. You guys are the most full of crap of all the Canadians. You're not speaking from patriotism. You're not speaking from knowledge. You are speaking from sheer desperation. And 95% of the country, the ones that get to keep their homes this year, are not going to help the 5% that lost their homes. And now you multiply that by 9 or 10 years, and the vast majority of Canadians are homeless on the continent their fathers conquered, just like Thomas Jefferson warned. This is where Canada is headed, 100% guarantee, unless, like I said, there's a massive revolution and the entire Canadian government gets replaced. Not we get rid of Trudeau and we replace him with Pierre Poilievre, whose first action is going to be a digital identity and a digital currency. You think the exit tax of $25,000 is bad now? Once they have you on a digital currency and digital ID,
God, I know.
If you want to leave Canada, they're going to take 30, 40, 50, 60% of your assets. You think the capital gains tax at 67% is going to stay there? No, it's going to keep increasing. They are going to increase taxes. They are going to increase fees to make sure that you can afford less and less and less. And they're going to do it in a way where it affects no more than 5%, 5 to 10% of the population every year. So the vast majority of you are just thankful that you have whatever you still have. So Canada is unlike any other country in the world. Canada is 100% doomed. The United States has a big problem with debt. They have a big problem with the fact that their currency is not going to be worth a lot. But the United States has one very, very big advantage. When you go from state to state, it's like a damn different country. Go to friggin' commie California or New York City, it's no different than Canada. Go to Texas or Florida, and you're literally in a different country. So what does that mean? The United States has a chance. But before the United States can become the United States again, they are 100% headed for an inevitable civil war with the blue states versus the red states. And the reason that the red states are probably going to lose, even though they're way more well-armed, way more ready to fight, is because the U.S. government is going to use swarms of weaponized drones. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of autonomous little drones that are all going to be armed to the teeth. And that is going to be the civil war you see in the United States. I cannot predict the exact date it's going to happen, but it's going to be sooner rather than later. So the United States is headed for civil war, and Canada is headed for full-out communist-style, soft communist-style takeover. And Canada is the model for the entire world to follow. And so you have all these Canadians saying, this is the other lie here, Canadians telling themselves, well, it's happening everywhere. So what's the point of leaving? It's not happening everywhere. It's not. Canada is by far the worst off of any country, third world country, developed country. People make fun of Mexico. People have this image of Mexico and Mexicans fleeing into the United States. I'm going to let you in on a little secret, ladies and gentlemen. Look it up. There are more people leaving the United States right now to go live in Mexico than there are Mexicans going into the United States. You know who's coming into the United States? You got people from... Go ahead.
I got more for you here. Look, I left Canada. I went to Costa Rica for 5.5 months. All this left-wing garbage is not there. Not one pride flag, not one Hamas flag, not one Palestine flag, not one Israel flag, not any, not Ukrainian flags, not Russian flags. They stay out of international affairs. They are focused on their own country, Chris. That's the best part of it. But Costa Rica has really only the one industry right now, which is real estate. Then I came to Panama a month ago. Panama City, imagine this, everybody. Remember when Toronto and Montreal and New York and Miami were just the most amazing cities in the world in the 1980s? That's what Panama City is right now. They own the Panama Canal here. There's ships, 40 or 50 a day, coming in and going. We have economic free zones here that have got the best products you've ever seen. The city is clean. The people are beautiful. There's opportunities everywhere. Chris, I was making $900 a month in Calgary on welfare because the Canadian government would not let me work. And now I'm making $10,000 a month here in Panama. It's a license to print money here in Panama, everybody. This garbage that Chris and I have been dealing with forever is not here. There's no pride flags here. There's just no international concern for these wars out there that have nothing to do with Panama. The Panamanian people are Christian nationalists, and they are defending their country down here. It is incredible. Everything Chris just brought up about Canada is not happening in Mexico. It's not happening in Belize. It's not in Guatemala. It's not in Nicaragua. It is not in Colombia. Chris can tell you about that. And it's not in Costa Rica, and it's not in Panama. There is money to be made here. There are opportunities here. In fact, that's what I do, is I help people get out of Canada and come down here and open bank accounts. Get your money out of Canada, for God's sakes. Get a hold of me on my website right now. I'm going to open up a bank account for you. You don't even have to come to the country. I can just take care of it from overseas for you. Chris, there's money here. It's awesome. The people are just incredible. I'm living my best life ever. I'm smiling all the time.
And that's how everybody feels that leaves Canada. You mentioned Mexico to Canadians. They're like, oh my God, it's a company run by drug cartels. The peso is a joke. Reality, the peso is the strongest performing currency in the entire world. Hedge funds will not even bet against it because it's only going to get stronger. Within 2 years ago, if you went from Canada to Mexico, it was 17 pesos per dollar, 17 and a half. Today, it's 12 and a half. 5 years from now, it's going to be virtually 1-to-1. The peso is going to end up being worth more than the dollar. And when people talk about the digital ID and digital currency, in Mexico, 50% of people don't even have a bank account. 60% of people don't even have a credit card. Everybody uses cash. Everybody cares about their family. There's never going to be laws that'll put you in jail for life if you offend an LGBT person. In places like Peru, they are distinguishing transgenderism as a mental illness. In places like Canada, they let transgender people work at daycares, and we have instances where 3- and 4-year-old children are literally being raped by transgender people who then don't even have to go to jail because they are a special protected class. They are doing everything in their power in Canada to weaken you, to rob you, and to ensure you have no future. And even in the countries like Italy and France, where they're doing the exact same attacks, guess what, guys? Italy is still 92% Italian. It's not 48% Italian and 52% immigrants. Within 10 to 12 years, I did the numbers on this. If immigration remains the way it does, and Canadians that are white are already the oldest of all the demographics, within about 12 to 15 years, you're going to see that white Canadians are maybe 1 out of 4 of the entire population. Our
Correct.
dollar is going to be one of the weakest in the world. Home ownership is going to be virtually impossible, and the vast majority of people are going to be living in a 15-minute city, paying rent on a 350 square foot condo, worrying about having to take whatever jabs and whatever else they want you to take so you can access your digital currency and never be able to pass anything on to your family. And now I'm going to address the final nail in the coffin, because we haven't talked.
I just want to point out one thing. Like, you keep that nail. I want to point out one thing. This over here, everybody, this is Panama City. I rented a plane. I asked the pilot to get clearance to take us through the downtown core, and they did. All right. And it was kind of funny what he said. The pilot says, you know, I've got 4 amigos in here. They're 4 white guys. And you hear like, oh, okay, well, white, take them downtown, let them see, because they assume that white skin has money. So, Chris, they cleared us to take the plane, first off, around the city and then right through the city. Now, does this look like third world to you people out there? Does this look like a country that doesn't have money? Does this look like a country that's suffering in any particular way economically? Look at this place, man. Wow. Chris, what's the final nail in the coffin? Let me hear it.
Well, we already know they want to depopulate everybody. And why do they want to do that? Because there's a little something that's come out now. It's called artificial intelligence. And even Goldman Sachs, the bankers that are enslaving you, put out a report that said within the next 5 years alone, AI is going to take hundreds of millions of jobs. So not only is your life going to get exponentially more expensive, you are not going to be able to find a job because your job is going to be no longer relevant because they can get a computer program to do it for you. So they want you on digital ID, digital currency, and a universal basic income. But they can't afford that for everybody. So they want to kill a whole bunch of you. They literally want to kill off over 80% of the world's population. And that's why they did the whole COVID scam with mandatory vaccinations. Those vaccinations are designed to kill you. They are designed to give you cancer, heart attacks, blood clots, HIV. They are designed to find whatever your genetic weakness is. I can take 100 Canadians right now to a state-of-the-art clinic. They will take samples of your DNA, feed it into the computer, and the computer, with startling accuracy, will tell each individual person what disease they are most likely to catch, when they're going to catch it, and when they're going to die. When you take those vaccines, which are designed as bioweapons to kill you, you are becoming part of the depopulation agenda. So for all those people that said they had no choice, I needed to take it for my job, or I needed to take it so I could travel. Believe me, you had a choice and you made the wrong one. And they're going to come out with another pandemic, same idea, only this time, when you mix all those vaccines together, we are going to see a massive dying off of people. They have already admitted that cancer has overtaken heart disease as the #1 cause of death in the world. And they estimated in 2022, 1 year after they started vaccinating people, that there are now over 10 million people dying a year of cancer. And now they anticipate by 2030, it is going to be between 50 to 100 million people a year dying of cancer. And it gets better. There's another silent killer that's coming out, and nobody's talking about it. Fungus. Fungus. Fungus has not killed a lot of people in the past. Why? Because your immune system was strong enough to fight off the vast majority of funguses. Since 2022, fungus is now the #2 killer. Fungal, it's like a bacterial infection, but a fungal infection behind cancer. And 5 million people in 2022 died of fungal infections. And the only way you can get a fungal infection is by having a compromised immune system. The only way you have a compromised immune system is because you were stupid enough to take a bioweapon that they called a vaccination. And for everybody that took it, you lowered your life expectancy. It could have been by 10 years, it could be by 50 years. But every single person that has taken even one jab has lowered their life expectancy. And every other jab on top of that that you took is going to compound that. And we are going to see millions and millions of people dying of cancers, heart disease, and fungal infections going into the next 10 years. And we're going to see more infertility than we have ever seen in the history of humanity. Sperm counts are already dropping in males because of everything they put in the food, everything they spray in the air. And with the vaccine causing miscarriages and problems with women's reproductive system, we are going to see this massive die-off of people and a massive amount of people that are not going to be able to have children. Virtually, the only people that are going to be able to have children are ones that have the money to go to a fertility clinic and do it artificially within about 10 years. That is where we're headed, ladies and gentlemen.
First off, you're not wrong on all of that. Now, there's something I want to point out to everybody here. There's some new people on the show who haven't been here before. Is during the fake pandemic, if you all remember, the Chris, this lovely gentleman here got arrested 27 times because he was telling the truth about the lack of a pandemic out there. And I got arrested 22 times for the same thing. Chris, during my last bout in the courts, this is where it got really bizarre, is the judge was presented with these ridiculous charges that they put on me, where he had the option to lock me up for an additional 14 days after I had been on house arrest for 3 months. So here's the way that it works. Mr. Johnston, you've been telling people for 3.5 years now that there is no pandemic. And I would very much like to order you to take your vaccines. His words, your vaccines. And I'm thinking, oh crap, like this guy's going to order. Oh man, what do I do? I'll be sitting in prison forever if this guy orders this. Then he says this to me. But Mr. Johnston, the law states that I cannot make that order without your permission. Like, go, really? So I said, Your Honor, may I speak to my lawyer alone for a minute, please? I went out in the hallway because my lawyer was representing me by Zoom at the time. I said, is this guy for real? Like, did he really just say, as a judge, that as a judge in a criminal case, he cannot issue a court order for me to take a needle? And my lawyer said, yeah, that's exactly right. And I asked him, well, how in the hell did private companies order this of their staff? So nobody had to take those needles, Chris, based on what that judge had said. So I waited 10 minutes and I came back in. I was very polite. I said, Your Honor, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to respectfully decline. And he just looks at me, looks at the crown. He says, you're free to go. Get out. He just threw me out of his courtroom.
What does that go back to? The Illuminati, just like I explained on the $1 bill, clear as day. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's right there. The pyramid with the all-seeing eye saying New World Order. They have to tell you what they're doing to you, and they need your consent. They'll lie to you, put pressure on you, tell you you might lose your job, tell you you might not be able to travel, but it comes down to you sticking your arm out there and allowing them to inject you with that poison. So if you are one of those people that got coerced, you are one of those people that willingly offered up your life to these people because they want to kill as many people as possible because they don't need you anymore. They've already used you as tax slaves for generations. They've already created and stolen all the wealth of your country. And now the only thing they want to do is take the last vestige of wealth, which is the private businesses, which are closing in record numbers. And they want to take anybody who owns a home and turn them into a renter. And then they want to kill as many of you as possible. So it's that much easier to control the rest of you. And we are literally, call it the end times, if you will. And Canada is leading the charge. Canadians are the weakest people in the world because what do we value more than anything? Tolerance. We've been told for decades that makes you a good person. The very definition of tolerance is putting up with something you know is wrong. So they have literally trained Canadians to turn the other cheek no matter how bad they come after you, no matter how bad they come after your family. And because we have not have a homogeneous population, because we can be distracted with Israel, Ukraine, LGBT, and all the rest of that bullshit, surprise, surprise, the experiment on Canada is the most successful experiment tyranny has ever had. There is virtually no resistance. Every Canadian looks at you like you're absolutely crazy when you tell them this. Even after they watch this whole show and everything in it is easily and 100% verifiable, 99% of Canadians will still stay in Canada. And there's three types of people in this world, Kevin. This is what people need to realize.
Go ahead.
I want them to end on this. Well, there's four types. There's the evil people that are doing this to you. And then there's three types of good people in the world. The vast majority, they call you the 99%, are slaves. You are meant to be slaves. You do not like responsibility. You cannot handle reality. And you will not make the necessary changes. You will stay here as long as it takes for you to virtually lose everything. And that is the vast majority of the population, slaves. The second category are the people that don't want to leave and will actually fight, few and far between. Those are what we call the sacrifices. Because unless you have the whole country behind you, you're either going to end up in jail or killed. And that is a much smaller number than the slaves because these people actually have courage. They just don't have the intelligence and the drive to do what's right. And there's a third category of people. And those people are called the chosen, or otherwise known as survivors. The people that see the writing on the wall, they call them the best, the brightest, the wealthiest. And the people that understand that you need to pick and choose your battles. The most successful generals and commanders and world conquerors from all of human history had one thing in common. They knew which battles to fight and which battles to retreat from. And these people, like you, like me, that have left Canada, not one person has left Canada and called me up and said, I wish I was back in Canada. They might say something like, I miss my family back in Canada, but they are much happier where they are, much better off where they are, have a much brighter future where they are. And if you raise your kids in Canada at this point, you are condemning your children to a life of slavery, a life of servitude, and a guaranteed lifestyle that is worse than yours. And your one responsibility as a citizen was to leave your country in a better state for the next generation. Canadians have already failed that. And now their number one job as a parent is to ensure that your children have a brighter future than you did. 99% of them are failing at that. And you can have this conversation in a room of 100 people, and you will notice that maybe 1 out of the 100 is like, holy crap, you guys are right. I got to get out of here. The other 99% will ridicule you, call you names, and make every excuse in the book to stay exactly where they are, do exactly what they're doing, condemn themselves, condemn their family, and become a statistic in this experiment that's called tyranny.
Okay, Chris, I gotta address a few people here. First off, for everybody in TikTok who's wondering if this is going to be replayed, yes, type in freedomreport.ca. I archive all my videos there. I've got something like 1,700 videos there. All right, so please check it out there. Also, there's only 2,700 likes. This is Chris Sky, everybody. Come on, start double tapping that screen. Like just rapid fire. Let's get it going. Below Chris Sky on Rumble, everyone, you'll see that thumbs up thing. You got to push the thumbs up, not the down, the up. We got to push that going. Guys, it helps the algorithm see us and get more traffic out there. Now, a couple of things also.
When you tell people the truth, you become very unpopular. I became popular during COVID because I told people the truth they wanted to hear. The mask was no good. The jab was no good. Don't close your business. So they wanted to listen to me. They wanted to believe in me. Now that I'm telling them exactly what's going to happen to them, they don't want to believe it. So now I am going to become probably the most unpopular person in Canada. And they're going to use the excuse of me wanting to get out of here and having a better life as another reason to hate me. So you're not going to get a lot of likes on this because there's two things that our Canadians are more scared of than anything: reality and responsibility. Yes. And they will do everything they can to avoid both. And the further society drifts from the truth, the more they will hate those that speak it. And that is exactly what I know is happening to me right now. All my following is, I can't believe Chris is saying this. I can't believe Chris is ready to leave. I can't believe Chris doesn't want to fight. I can't believe Chris thinks Canada's done. I don't think, ladies and gentlemen. I know. Just like I knew with the pandemic, I know what's going on right now. I know what's going to happen every single year. And I'm telling you for your own good. But you just do not want to hear it because your reality is too scary for most of you to face. And you don't want the responsibility. That's why 99% of you are meant to be slaves. You secretly want your decisions made for you. You don't want to have to make all these hard choices. You have been programmed since birth for decades to be a slave. And you Chris, do not understand it. It's completely programmed.
Right. And I got to tell you what the excuses are that I hear from everybody. Kevin, you're an idiot going to Costa Rica and Panama. Those are third world countries. I just showed you. No, they're not. There's a ton of money here. Oh, I'd like to go, but my mom is a little old. Take her with you. What is she doing with her time? What are your parents, your elderly parents, doing with their time? They are sitting in front of the television set, getting dumber by the day because they're watching CBC and CTV and City TV and all the other crap out there that's designed to make them dumb. And they're soaking this up. You know what is incredible about Panama here, everybody, is that I've had not one, but 24 of my clients actually come to Panama City in just the last 4 weeks. And it's this, Chris, the eyes are opened up because they cannot believe how polite people are here, how pleasant they are here, how much money there is here, and the value that you get for your dollar. Chris, Right here in the neighborhood that I'm in, I don't cook. Do you know why? Every single restaurant is serving hot chicken, hot pork, hot beef on rice with beans and a beverage, usually a delicious Panamanian coffee, $3. I am having two really dynamite meals that they made for me, $3 a meal. All right. I'm buying bananas for 8 cents a banana. I'm buying apples for 10 cents a piece. I'm buying bags of coffee for $3. Come on, everybody. You get value elsewhere. Stop making excuses. Don't blame your parents. Don't say, I got my job here in Canada. I got to stay. What is your job doing? It's paying you what, 50 grand a year? And how much are you losing in tax? Oh, I know the exact number. It's $18,500 a year. And what's your rent in Toronto? Oh, Chris, we know this one. It's $2,500 a month. All right. What are you paying for a meal in a restaurant in Toronto? Oh, we know this one too. It's $20 for a hamburger in Toronto. You're out of your friggin' minds if you think staying in Canada is a good idea. It sucks. I've wanted out of Canada for over 20 years, Chris. Over 20 years. I stuck it out. I foolishly made excuses. I said, yeah, I'm not going to uproot my kids and let them grow up in their childhood home. Stupid decision. I'm an idiot for thinking that way. I could have been in Panama making a ton of money like I'm doing now. Stop making excuses. Chris,
Canadians are number one in the entire world for making excuses.
Damn
and the
right
main excuses I hear every day are, oh, it's happening everywhere, so I might as well stay in Canada. No, it's not. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. The other excuse you hear is, oh, my family's still here, or my old parents are still here, so I can't bring them with me, or I'm divorced and it's going to be hard to bring my kids. Just more excuses. The other excuses you hear are, oh, we're going to be saved by the white hats, or Nasara Jassara is coming. So they have to cling to a psyop to live with reality. And finally, we have the religious people that say, oh, all you got to do is believe in Jesus and read your Bible, and you won't have to do anything. Jesus did a lot. Jesus ran into the temples of the money changers, screaming and yelling and flipping the tables over and telling everybody what's what, telling everybody what's going to happen. And yes, he ended up sacrificing his life for everybody else. And you people think that all you need to do is say, I love Jesus, and hold on to a book, and everything's going to be okay. It's absolute lunacy, but Canadians will convince themselves of anything rather than the discomfort of having to leave. And people, and the other excuse finally is that, like you said, they have their job here. Most of them are making minimum wage, working their ass off, so they can barely pay rent and eat garbage food. When they can go to another country, live like the equivalent of kings, have better weather, higher quality food, and a much better future for their children. There is no digital ID coming to Mexico. There was no digital currency coming to Mexico. They have 41,000 organic food producers to Canada's 8,000. They have a robust economy. They have the strongest performing currency in the world. And then people talk about the cartel. The cartel doesn't know who you are. The cartel doesn't give a shit about you. And I would much rather deal with the cartel than deal with Justin Trudeau and the commie government that we have in Canada.
I got to address some of the questions flying up here right now. So, Michael, no, I'm in Panama City, Panama, the capital of Panama. All right. That is why I am making money. I'm not in the United States being stifled right now by the ridiculousness of the Democrat Party crushing the U.S. economy. Panama, like Mexico, want to expand. There are farms all over this place here in Panama that are all producing really good organic food. They use the U.S. dollar here, but everything's affordable. Chris, there's a walkway here. All right. You guys want to get a sense of what's going on? I showed you earlier in the show how beautiful downtown Panama is. Right along the ocean front, there's a walkway, and I walk it every single night. I do a 10K walk because I love the city so much. At 5 p.m., everyone knows the sun's going down at 6:30, so the carts come out. You can have an ice cream cone for $1. You can have frozen yogurt for $1. You can have a hamburger for $2, a hot dog for $1, a chicken wrap for $1. Any beverage you want, water, Coke, don't drink Coke, coconut water, $1. You can have mango, sliced mango, big thing like this for $2, and they'll put some sea salt on it. It's parfait. Guys, people around here live for today. in Mexico, in Costa Rica, in Panama, in these countries that really are trying to succeed, the people are living for today. They're planning for tomorrow, but they're living for today. You can enjoy yourself everywhere you go and get true value for your money. And for those who are curious, I live in Panama City, the capital. I just signed a 1-year lease on this amazing place, and I am less than a 5-minute walk from the Santa Ana Cathedral, which is a UNESCO heritage site. It's beautiful. It was built in 1657. It's mind-numbing to be around architecture that is that old. All right, now for all you want to get a hold of me, my website's in the bio somewhere around here on TikTok. My name, Kevin J, middle initial J, Johnston, JOHNSTON .me, kevinjjohnston.me. And if you want to book a consultation with me right now to get out of Canada, move your money to Canada, or have me save you copious amounts of money on your taxes, in the bottom right corner, it's kevinjjohnston.com. I can get rid of your corporate debt completely, and I can help annihilate about half of your actual personal CRA debts. Guys, I've been studying this stuff for years. Let's get your money away from the Canada Revenue Agency and invest it in Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama. It's your money. Keep it. Start living life, folks, because Canada will kill you. Chris, you're up.
I just want to point out something too. The banking system in Canada, when you create a savings account, how much interest do they pay you? Virtually nothing. The fees end up being more. And your money's not even secure in the bank. They can take it from you whenever you want. I had people go to the bank, try to take $2,000 cash out, and they want receipts. They want written, signed documents of what you're using your money for. You go to Mexico, they will bring you into the bank as a private customer. They have normal savings accounts in Mexico that pay you 10% interest a year on your money. Let me say that again. 10% interest a year on your money. For a normal savings account where your money's not locked in, you can go and take it anytime you want. They will, and they pay the interest daily, not monthly, daily. In Mexico, if you own a home, you can go into the bank and they will give you a loan of up to 70% of the value of your home without even filling out an application, without having to get approved. They make it so simple. And if you want to invest your money in the Mexican bank account and have it locked up for a year, you can get mutual funds that pay up to 15% a year.
Amazing.
This is how you can have a country that looks after you. This is how you can grow a future for your family. And there is literally no excuse that any Canadian can come up with. And by the way, your time to leave Canada is limited. It's going to get harder every single year. And when they bring out the digital ID and digital currency, they are going to steal virtually all of your assets if you try to leave the country, like any communist dictatorship before them. They're going to tell you, oh, you want to leave Canada? Your exit tax is going to be that capital gains tax, 67%. So you sold your home for $500,000 and you want to take that money out of Canada? Within 4 or 5 years, they're going to want 350,000 of that 500,000.
Oh yeah, they are. They are. Okay, Chris, a couple of quick questions here in the room. Very important questions, very good questions. What is the healthcare like here in Panama? 20 years ahead of Canada. If look, guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, everybody watching right now, I've been working very hard on this since I got here. Panama is a place where you can make your dream come true. The old American dream from the 50s is here in Panama. I'm going to be helping Canadians, Brits, and Americans who cannot get access to healthcare to get healthcare down here in Panama. So imagine getting a CAT scan on Monday and an MRI on Tuesday and your blood work and everything done on Wednesday. Could you imagine that? Look, when Chris, Antifa attacked me back in 2018, they knocked me off a ladder when I was running for mayor of my hometown, Mississauga, ripped my ACL, completely gone. It took 6 months in Canada to get an MRI. It then took 6 more months to get the surgery after waiting 2 months for the doctor to actually look at the MRI and tell me, oh, you don't have an ACL. I can build you a new one. 6 months. So it was more than a year I had to wait. Then I found out I could have gone to Paris and paid 5,000 euro for it. Then I found out I could have gone to Costa Rica or Panama and paid about 3,500 to get the same thing done. If I had known that, I would have just split and dealt with it.
Meanwhile, people in Canada think their health care is free. You know how many people I had to say we got the vaccine and it was free. You're so lucky that it was free. We paid hundreds and hundreds of millions of our tax dollars to bring those vaccines in, and they threw most of them in the friggin' garbage. This is how out of touch with reality Canadians are. Canadians are probably the least informed, the dumbest and weakest people, not just in the world today, but in world history. So hate me all you want. Everything I'm telling you is 100% fact. I've been getting people Mexican residencies. I've helped almost 100 people personally leave Canada for Mexico. Next month, I'm going to have my Colombian passport, a Colombian diplomatic passport, which allows me visa-free travel to 154 countries, allows me to go through the security lines at the airport. And this is the kind of life that you could be having, but you're too busy making excuses, too busy going out every Friday and Saturday night, spending your money on booze, spending your money on cigarettes, gambling on stupid sports, etc.
Yeah, leave ticket. Okay, so we got a Canadian boy down here, our co-host Ed Janicek. Ed, unfortunately, you are now leaving Panama. You've been here for a week. That's you at the airport getting ready to split. Tell us about Panama. Go ahead.
Okay, cost of living is a big thing for me because if I leave, I want to leave and know I'm not going to get ripped off left, right, and center. So the fact that gasoline here is under $1 a liter for regular gas is great. Diesel, 88 cents US a liter. What are we paying in Canada, guys? $1.60, $1.80 already? That's almost double. What's going on? What's the price of fuel in Colombia, Chris?
Oh, it's much cheaper than that. I can't even remember off the top of my head. But what I can tell you is in Mexico, it took 35 years for the price of gas to rise as much as it rose in 1 year in Canada.
Wow, man.
Okay.
35 years.
I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the price of silver is going to go through the roof. Mexico is probably going to nationalize its silver mines. So they might be in a good position for, silver is the poor man's current money, right? I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah, it's also being used, though, in all of the major solar farm experiments, we'll call them out there.
I believe gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of gentlemen, and cash, fiat currency, is the debt of slaves. That's the quote you're going for there, Dad.
Brilliant, Chris. Brilliant. Yeah. So, Ed, after you having been here for a week and enduring me for that week's time, never mind me, what are your thoughts? Should people try Panama out? Tell us what you think.
Guys, you can get anything you want here in Panama, and the prices are not out of this world. Unfortunately, Costa Rica is very expensive compared to Panama. The roads are better for the most part. The taxi drivers, every single one of them wants to kill you. Other than that, it's a great country. I like it here. Climate's not bad. Yeah, you can get everything you want. So I gotta see what life is like down. Where are you now, Chris? What country are you in?
Right now, I'm in Turkey. Turkey's great if you're a tourist because it's very cheap. But Turkey is doing the same thing. They're trying to do the whole World Economic Forum agenda. Since the pandemic in Turkey, listen to this, guys, and I didn't believe it because I was talking to an Uber, and he was very knowledgeable, Uber. His daughter lived in Toronto. Before the pandemic, within 5 years, the price of cars and the price of homes went up over 500%. So in Turkey right now, I looked at the price of a 2011 Mercedes E-Class with 300,000 kilometers. In Canada, it's 10 grand. In Turkey, it was 55,000 euros for a 2011. Then I looked at condos. My friend that I was talking to bought in a condo building not far away from where I'm staying right now, and he said he paid, the condos were going for between 500,000 Turkish lira to 800,000 Turkish lira. They're now up for 5 million Turkish lira. So if you want to live in Turkey, I would not recommend it. If you want to come here as a tourist, you can have amazing food for really cheap. The hotels, everything is really cheap. But if you're living here, it's one of the countries on the list to get screwed over. And they don't want you owning a home. They don't want you owning a car. And that's two of the things that they've priced out. But the food here is still super cheap because they know if they raise the price of food, Turkish people have a backbone, they'd be rioting in the streets. They'd be going after the government. So they're hitting them where they can. It's not like Canada where every single thing is becoming more expensive. And they're doing that on purpose. And I want to leave you guys with one quote from a famous guy named George Orwell, who knows a little bit about the future. And you know what he said? If you want a picture of the future, picture a boot stamping on the human face forever. That is Canada circa 2035 and for the rest of our days. Canada is a failed state. It is a failed nation, and there is no going back to the Canada that was. There is no saving the Canada that we had. The only thing you can do at this point, besides a massive revolution and shrinking the size of government into less than half and cutting the rest of their salaries and putting them all in jail and running $100 billion budget surplus for the next 10 to 20 years, is getting the hell out. It's that simple. It is that simple. Call me any name you want. I'm not going to stay here and bear the responsibilities of the ineptitude, the inaction, and the apathy of the 99% of people that I'm trying to help and I'm trying to warn. And not only are they not listening, they're actually attacking me and talking shit to me. So you all deserve exactly what's coming because you created this situation. You refuse to acknowledge the situation. And even as it crumbles before your very eyes, all you're doing is making every excuse to stay and suffer. So I feel sorry for your children, but I don't feel sorry for the people that are choosing to stay in Canada because it is a choice. Just like the vaccine was a choice, just like wearing a mask was a choice. You always have a choice. And if you choose wrong, you're going to pay for it this time.
Immensely.
Yeah,
Chris,
unfortunately, it's hard for people to.
Ed, hold on. So what I was going to say, Chris, is that what they're doing here, like you said, is they're killing the economy, they're killing your capacity to make money, and then they're killing you. Now, we've got the MAIDS, MAIDS, medical assistance in dying. If you're broke, you can simply go to a hospital and say, "Hi guys, I'm broke. Please kill me," and they will. And as you said, they'll harvest your organs, and that is a real sick part. Yeah.
And
what's your question?
It's so popular. You know that MAIDS became the number 3 cause of death in Quebec, eh? So the number 3 cause of death in Quebec was people paying to have themselves killed because their life was so shit. And it hasn't even begun to get bad yet. It is just starting to get bad.
Yeah. Ed, what was your question?
Oh, I forgot. But okay, what's it like in Colombia, Chris? You've been there. Where else have you traveled in the last 6 months?
I love Colombia. For the people that live there, if you grew up in poverty, it's hard to get out of poverty. But if you're going there with a couple bucks in your pocket and you're an entrepreneur and you start a business, it's amazing. When you have the passport there, if you're living there for less than 6 months out of the year, they only charge you taxes on the money you make in Colombia. So because I have a Canadian citizenship, because I have a Mexican residency, and because I'm going to have a Colombian passport, I'm going to be splitting my time primarily between Colombia and Mexico, but I'll still be coming back to Canada, unfortunately, because I have a property with my wolf sanctuary. And until all my beautiful wolves pass on to the next life, I'm going to be keeping that property. I have employees that live at that property. So I'm going to be splitting my time between those 3 countries. So basically, I'm only going to have to pay taxes in Canada on my Canadian income, in Mexico on my Mexican income, and in Colombia on my Colombian income. But I'm going to have 3 separate sources of income. And I've been all over Colombia, Bogota, Cartagena, Medellin. Medellin is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to in my life. Everything there is probably half as much as Mexico. Mexico is probably half as much as Canada. The only problem with Mexico is everybody's realizing that Mexico is this paradise, so its cost of living is actually going up. So that's why I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. I believe the smartest thing that people can do in this day and age is be internationally nomadic. Collect as many residencies as passports as you can, create revenue streams in every one of those countries, and you're always going to have a place to go. Because let's face it, the weather and everything in every country has a best time and a worst time. Who the hell wants to be in Canada during the winter? Not me. Mexico in July and August can get up to 40 friggin' degrees. Colombia in Medellin stays between 24 and 28 all year round. So the weather there is ideal. The women there are probably the most beautiful I've ever seen, besides maybe Ukraine. And I've been to 51 countries so far. And then the quality of life and standard of living you have, if you have another source of income or you have a business in Colombia, is unbeatable. So that's why I'm getting my Colombian passport. I'll have it within 3 weeks, and I'm going to be helping a lot of people get it. I've helped already a lot of people get Mexican residencies, and I'll keep my Canadian citizenship and passport just because I really have to. But I wouldn't be surprised if within 5 to 10 years, I'll get my passport one more time, and then when it expires the next time, I wouldn't be surprised if I have to relinquish my Canadian citizenship, because the laws are going to be so unfavorable for anyone trying to leave Canada. It's going to literally be like a hellhole prison.
It already is, really, because so many people are having a difficult time getting out. But I did want to point this out, Chris, is that because the Canadian government, when I was speaking out against the fake pandemic, they incarcerated me. Antifa was attacking me all the time. They stole my house. They stole my car. They drained my bank accounts. I had nothing left. I went to Costa Rica back in November with $900 Canadian in my pocket, going to the most expensive country in Latin America and finding my way eventually here to Panama, where I am now doing incredibly well. Stop making excuses. Like, I was borderline, just like I was living outdoors, guys. I wasn't even allowed inside the person's house that I was living with. I was living under a rain shelter. So let's just really factor in, if you want to go, you can go and you can make it. Stop making excuses. Period.
Okay, about excuses, Chris, sorry, Kevin, you got to clear this up for us. Everybody knows Colombia, every second person is a drug dealer or a killer or an assassin. True or false?
Completely false. If you are in Colombia and you're a gringo that's going there to have sex with as many hookers as you can, and you're doing drugs every night, then yes, you're going to get noticed and you're going to be a target. If you're going to Colombia, and I lived there for a couple months, and you're going to work, or you're going to the gym, or you're going to the grocery store, or you're going out to dinner, and you're doing normal things, you will not get bothered. The only time I got bothered in Colombia is that so many people recognized me. They were coming up to me and asking me for pictures, just like they do in Canada. That was the only time I attracted attention, and I was in a very, very crowded area, and I had 3 beautiful young women come up to me and literally start groping me in the middle of the street because they thought I was famous, and one of them tried to steal my phone, and I immediately noticed within 5 seconds, chased them down, grabbed them by the back of the neck, and politely asked for my phone back. When they tried to tell me they didn't know what I was talking about, I robbed them. I took their phones, I took their purses, and I started walking away. It took them about 3 seconds to give me my phone back and apologize. And that was the only problem I've ever had. And I've been going to Colombia since 2017, every year, all different places. So you have these stories about these people. Oh, I went to Colombia and this happened to me. Yeah, what were you doing? You were trying to have sex with an underage hooker that had a black pimp 5 meters away. And you did that every friggin' night for the whole time you were there. And you were doing drugs every night you were there. So what do you think's going to happen to you? Let's go to Surrey, BC and hang out. Or let's go to Hastings in Vancouver. Or let's go to friggin' the bad parts of Red Deer. Or why not hang out at Jane and Finch in Toronto all night and see what happens to you? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. In Canada, they're literally telling you to leave your keys and your valuables by the front door, so when you get your inevitable home invasion, that you won't have to face your attackers. Nobody's breaking into your house in Colombia. I'll tell you that right now.
Not here
It's
either.
everything people are hearing is complete falsehoods. And if you notice, all these warnings are coming out of Canadian government websites. They're the ones that are issuing these travel warnings to these so-called dangerous places, almost like they don't want people to leave.
MSN, they've been promoting these stories like crazy. Kevin, what did the lawyer tell you today about the Panama Papers?
Well, here's what we learned today, everybody. We learned today that Canadians and Americans and anybody else out there can actually register a corporation here in Panama and eventually open up a bank account as well. So the Panama Papers, really what it boiled down to is that the banks were threatened by Canada, United States, United Kingdom, Australia, the big boys in the Western world, to not allow money laundering to take place. But the problem is, it's what they called money laundering. All Panama was doing was really, really good business here, because they run the canal, and the canal makes $1 billion, I don't know, maybe every couple of days. It's crazy how much money it makes. So the Panama Papers were essentially there to destroy a developing country who had, get this, a superior banking system to all of North America. It is a very good banking system. Like Chris says, you can make a lot of money in banks in other parts of the world. So North America came rolling right in and said, nope, you can't have a better banking system than us. So don't let our citizens open up bank accounts remotely. That's pretty much what it boiled down to. Chris,
they literally called you opening a bank account in Dominican or in Panama and trying to transfer your funds from Canada to there, money laundering. That's what they were doing, literally. Yep. You're literally just trying to move your money from one bank to another, but because it's leaving Canada and they don't have access to it anymore and access to you anymore, they call that money laundering. No, money laundering is when you're doing something illegal and you're charging that money into legal means, not just simply transferring your money from one bank to another. So those were complete propaganda, complete lies. And like you said, Kevin, it was just a way for them to try to stop people from realizing that there is a much better banking system out there. The banks actually care about you, treat you like a person. They don't try to destroy your savings with fees and levies, etc.
Correct. We've got somebody in the room here in TikTok from Panama. So, Michael, you're correct. Panama City has this vast number of malls here. There's a mall in Panama City that's really close to the canal, Chris. It's almost 800 meters long.
Wow.
The thing is huge, and it's like something like 500 meters wide. It's full of retail. Let me tell you something, Chris, about Panama City here. Every shop is open for business and making money. When you walk around the town here, there are no boarded up places at all. It's not like Chicago. It's not like Toronto. It's not like Vancouver. It's not like New York. Every business is running and making money. There's so much money floating around Panama City that the grocery stores have street vendors right outside of them selling the same vegetables and fruits as are being sold inside the shop, and the shop doesn't care because everybody's making money. It's unbelievable how much money there is in Latin America, everyone. Get out of Canada, man. Come here and make some money. And smile about it, too. Look what I'm doing. Chris, the smile does not leave my face.
Honest, Kevin, I've never seen you happier in my life.
Yeah, you're probably right on that. You're probably correct on that.
Here in Panama, I've noticed people are not uptight like they are at home. Like, really. People, if you smile, someone will smile back. You start talking to them, they'll talk back to you. If you talk to the cops, they'll arrest you and take a picture with you.
Well, in Canada, they do. But here, today, I had 2 police officers buy me a cup of coffee, and in broken English, we were discussing where I was from. And then we cheers our coffee cups, had a sip, and they had to go back to patrol. Yeah. In Canada, well, Chris, what do the cops do to you and me? They followed us around everywhere. They would give us parking tickets and speeding tickets and tickets for nothing. I had to wear a pair of handcuffs with just a T-shirt on in 0-degree weather on the side of the highway for 2 hours while the police, the RCMP, stole my car. I've never seen it since. No idea where it is. And then they gave me my jacket, tipped their hat, and said, "Have a good day." And I had to yell, "Hey, guys, can you take the handcuffs off?" Like, "Oh, yeah, we forgot." That's Canada. Down here, you get none of that nonsense.
And Canada's going to get way, way worse. I can't stress that enough. Every year from now, Canada's going to get worse. I read an economic report, and I said it's going to get worse exponentially, and by 10 years from now, it's going to be unrecognizable. This report said Canadians can expect a lower standard of living for the next 25 years straight.
Yeah.
25 years. You know what Canada's going to look like in 25 years? You remember the movie Escape from LA with Kurt Russell?
Oh yeah.
That's gonna be Canadians trying to literally get out of a friggin' communist style hellhole. And this has happened many times before in history. Canadians think that they're unique. The only uniqueness about Canadians is that they're so apathetic and so blind to what's going on. And when you tell them, their programming kicks in and they get angry. And that's how you can tell they've been brainwashed since birth.
Oh,
And they'll come
Chris,
up with every excuse in the book.
how many times have you heard this one? Hey man, Toronto's the best city in the world. How many times have you heard that one? And I keep asking Torontonians who say this stuff, give me one reason why. Like the Leafs, man. Okay, the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup back in 1967 when there was only 6 teams in the league. Next, free healthcare. Like, that's not municipal. That is provincial, and it's not free because Canadians are paying 73% of every dollar in taxes now in the country. What's next? Well, we got like the CN Tower, tallest building in the world. It's first off, it's not a building, it's a tower. And secondly, there are 40 structures around the world taller than it. What's next? What do you have, Toronto? Why is it that everyone in Canada thinks that Canada is so friggin' amazing? It's just not.
It's the propaganda.
Yeah,
that's why we have immigrants coming from like India and stuff, thinking Canada's this best country in the world. And now even record numbers of the immigrants are leaving after 6 months. When you got somebody coming from Bangladesh and saying, wow, Canada is worse than Bangladesh, that should tell you everything you need to know about Canada and where it's headed. But Canadians,
and let me tell you about Bangladesh, Chris. I've been there, and I can tell you how awful that place is, but I don't want to burn up like 3 hours insulting another country because I had nothing good to say about it. It had nothing good going for it. And Bangladeshis, who typically have an IQ of less than 80, are going to Canada, and they're going, holy smoke, it's Eureka moment. They're geniuses. They're leaving.
Yeah.
So why aren't you leaving Canada? There you go. Oh, and hold on. Someone says Toronto means welcome. Okay, the word Toronto means welcome, but I can tell you this: nobody in Toronto feels welcome to be there. It's a very cold city, very cold. And
it's like smile at someone in Toronto, they won't smile back at you. You know why? Because they hate their life. Because if you live in Toronto, your life consists of working 50 plus hours a week just so you can pay your rent and just so you can eat a box of noodles. This is the reality in Toronto. You want a studio apartment, it's $2,500 a month. You want a 1-bedroom apartment, it's going to be $3,000 a month. Then that's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, is paying rent, getting nowhere. And of course you're going to hate your life because you have no prospects for the future and your life sucks. The weather sucks. The government sucks. The food sucks. The people suck. Everything about Canada sucks. Period.
Well, the hunting is good. You got good hunting.
Go there on a hunting trip. Go there on vacation. Don't live there.
For sure. Chris, we're down to our last 10 minutes here. I just want to get your final commentary, if we could, please, on the banking system in Canada and what we need to do. Go ahead.
Well, we explained in detail how the banking system is 100% designed to rob you of your purchasing power through inflation and debt. It is not an accident that the government spends every dollar possible and expands every sector of government by as much as they are legally allowed every year. It is also not an accident that the government is growing at 4 times the rate of the private sector. The entire idea is that government is supposed to be the dominant force in all of Canada, and it's supposed to have control of all the money, make all the rules, and control you. Like every other communist dictatorship in history, the only difference is they're doing it in a soft way because Canadians are so weak and so ignorant and so apathetic that they can literally lead you like a child right off the cliff and you'll walk right off. And that's what we're noticing in Canada. The whole country is headed off a cliff. People like you and me are standing there screaming with megaphones, turn around, stop. And they just look at you and laugh as they keep walking. They all have the same stupid laugh and the same stupid smile that shows, number one, they have no idea what they're talking about. And number two, in reality, they know better and they're nervous. That, you know how people laugh when they're nervous? That's what I hear when I tell Canadians it's time to leave. They secretly, in their hearts, in their souls, they know better. But they have been programmed for decades by propaganda, and they are so scared. Canadians are the most fearful people in the entire world. They're afraid of change. They're afraid of everything. They're literally afraid of their own shadow. And that is why Canada is really probably the worst country in the world right now. Maybe North Korea is just is on another level. But if you're looking at civilized countries, or you're looking at Latin America, or even looking at Asia, I know people that moved to Cambodia and are having the time of their life. They love it. People are living in Thailand and they love it.
Chris,
The only
I gotta
people I
make
see
a point.
that are unhappy are Canadians.
I got to make a point. All right. Not only are you and I the two best looking guys in Canada or from Canada, but we're also the two biggest mouths in Canada. Like, no one's louder than you and me. All right. That's just how it is. And what I find in Canada is that Canadians absolutely cannot stand a big mouth, because what they'll say is, well, you're more American than you are Canadian. Well, what exactly does that mean? What it means is, Chris, guys like you and I, we have drive. We are absolutely driven to do better. So what I did notice is, as soon as I left Canada, a guy with a big mouth like mine is liked and wanted in Costa Rica, even more so here in Panama. They love a big mouth here. So if you've got a lot to say and you speak English well and you're amusing and funny, whatever else it might be, you'll do incredibly well. So if you guys out there do have big mouths, get the hell out of Canada. They're going to keep punishing you for it. Chris, I did 7 months in prison in total, plus 3 months of house arrest for just having a big mouth. How many did you do? Just for talking.
I spent over 30 nights in jail, but I never had to do any sentences because I was never actually convicted. I beat 80 charges so far, but I had to spend up to 3 nights in jail in certain instances. And every time I was in jail, by the way, because I refused to wear a mask, because I refused to take a test, and because I refused to be vaccinated, I was put in solitary confinement. And as the other inmates are allowed out twice a day for an hour and 10 minutes each time, you can go to the gym, you can go to the library, you can watch TV, you can interact with other inmates. I was kept in my cell 23 hours and 45 minutes every single day. And I was only let out on the range for 10 to 15 minutes by myself, only allowed a phone call, not allowed access to any of the facilities. And they even disabled the hot water in my cell, so I couldn't make coffee and I couldn't wash myself. That was my experience in prison, and all because we were telling people the truth. And it's like you said, I don't like big mouths because they don't want to be told the truth. Because if they told the truth, they might actually have to face responsibility and reality. And none of them want to do that. None of them want to do that. They all want to pretend that everything's going to be okay. They all tell themselves, oh, it's going to be better next year. But the reality of the situation is it's only going to get worse from here. And the government has so much control now that they can choose exactly how much it's going to get worse. And they're going to make it as bad as physically possible, to the point where they don't want to rile up Canadians enough that they actually wake them up. And that is why I'm telling Canadians that every 3 years, you're going to see a doubling in your cost of living, because at that pace, the vast majority of people every year are just going to see their livelihoods dwindle a little bit, but not enough that they're actually going to stand up for the people who just lost their home, and not enough that they're going to want to risk what they have. It is a perfectly designed system to keep the people in place, keep the people apathetic, keep the people in fear, while you take every single thing they have, including their dignity and, most importantly, their children's future. So, and the last point I want to make before we go, why do we have big mouths? Because we're trying to help you, you friggin' morons. We could be like all the other people, keep our mouths shut and just leave Canada, like all the rest of the people are doing in record numbers. But we're talking to you because we're trying to help you. We're trying to save you. And I learned right away in the pandemic, you can't save everybody. And in fact, you can't even save the majority. But if I can save even 1% of the population of Canada, Well, I've done more than every other Canadian put together because they can't even save themselves.
Right. Chris, it's always a pleasure to see you, my friend. You know, the energy levels you have, the knowledge base you have, and in general, the way that you have been a warrior for the last 5 years straight. I salute you. Whatever that means to you, I salute you and respect you to the nines, man. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here once again.
This has been my favorite show we've ever done, Kevin. I think we covered more ground here than we've covered in any other show. I think we've hit on the most important topics that are going to affect people's lives more than anything else. And I believe that if people watch this video 10 years from now, it's going to be like looking at a crystal ball.
Great. Chris, last question. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, I've been banned off every social media, including Twitter, because Elon Musk is just like the rest of them. So you can call me. Everyone has my cell phone number, 416-400-9994. I always keep it out there for people that actually want help. And on my Telegram is still alive, even though they take followers from me every day. It's Real Chris Sky, all capital letters, Real Chris Sky. And then my email is simply chrissky83@gmail. It's been sitting there the whole time. And those are the only three ways to contact me right now. And I'm not interested in going on social media anymore, to be honest, because I was interested in it during the pandemic because every single person that listened to me was a person I could get to just say no and turn things around and get our freedoms back. But now it's at the point where you're going to be a slave unless you leave Canada. It's that simple. So there's nothing to just say no to anymore. There's nothing for you to get back. Now it's just how much you're going to lose every year and how long you're willing to stay here and how much you're willing to lose. It's that simple.
Well, seemingly, Chris, everybody wants to lose everything, but we'll cover that topic on another show. That's for sure. Can't wait to have you back, brother. Great seeing you.
Always a pleasure. Love you, Kevin. Love you, Ed, if you're still there. And I honestly, I love Canadians, but you guys are friggin' stupid and you got to wake up. I'm sorry.
Definitely. Chris Sky, the astounding Chris Sky. Thanks, brother. Take care of yourself.
Cheers, bro.
Well, that was absolutely phenomenal. Ed, we got to go. What's your last statement there, please?
Guys, you trusted the media? Well, you found out they've been lying to you. We've talked about a bunch of stuff tonight. A lot of that stuff came through the media. Yeah, I think they were lying about that stuff too, like all the, the Panama Papers, how the banking is all screwed up. It's actually quite secure here in Panama. The cartel is running Colombia. Chris was down there many times. He's got his residency there, I believe. Why would he lie? Have you ever caught him lying?
No, not once.
Think about this, guys. See you on Thursday, Kevin.
Yeah, you will. Thanks, Ed. All right, everyone. I saw a clip, a couple things before we end the show tonight. Number one, the Panama Canal. Everyone's in Canada. They're lying to you. The media says the Panama Canal is closed because the water levels are too low. No, the water levels are too high. They're actually draining more water out of the canal because there's just that much of it. Number two is for everybody out there who is an international student. The Canadian government is spending a ton of money right now to convince you that Canada is a good place to go. It is not a good place to go. If you are an international student, the government will strip you of all your cash. So will the universities, and in no way, shape, or form will you be able to afford a plane ticket to even leave after they've drained all of your resources. All right, so just stop. The Canadian government also puts out warnings to you saying that Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Panama are dangerous. It is an absolute lie. I walk all over the city late at night alone with earbuds in, not paying attention to the sound effects around me. Nobody has bothered me. Everyone's been kind, sweet, and polite. That is just how it is, everyone. The Canadian government is nervous about all of you leaving, so they are lying to you to try to keep you in place. Do not fall for it. It is all fabrication. It sickens me to no end that the Liberal Party of Canada and everybody else who's in charge of it wants to harm Canadians and international students as much as they do, but that's exactly what they are doing, everyone. And for those who want to get a hold of me, here's my website address right now. It's in the bottom left corner, kevinjjohnston.com, C-O-M, kevinjjohnston.com. If you are being pestered by the Canada Revenue Agency, I can get you out of your tax debt. Also, if you have corporate debt, I can get rid of the whole thing for you. Gone 100%. I've been studying Canadian tax law for a very long time. In fact, since I was in grade 7 myself, because I saw the damage that the Canada Revenue Agency can do to families, and they hurt my family something fierce. I've got a personal vendetta against those dirtbags. So it's time to contact me to get rid of your tax debts. Every Wednesday, everybody, every Wednesday at freedomreport.ca, I also run the real estate show. We always talk about real estate. There it is right here, freedomreport.ca. Wednesday, we talk about commerce and we talk about real estate. We focus on that. And this is the Kevin J. Johnston show that runs absolutely every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I just want to say welcome to all of you who are here for the first time. We greatly appreciate everything you did. We certainly appreciate all the likes. We love you for that, and all the sharing that you have done for us today. God, I'm blessed, really. I have not an audience. I've got a family here online, and I love you all for being here. My name is Kevin J. Johnston. This is the Kevin J. Johnston Show. Never miss a beat with us Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I love you all, and good night.